You know, tucked away in the New Testament, there's this ancient hymn. It's possibly one of the earliest Christian confessions ever written down. You find it in the letter to the Philippians, and it tells this absolutely cosmic story of a divine descent and then this ultimate exaltation. So in this explainer, we're going to dive in and really unpack what it all means.
Right at the heart of this hymn is this, well, frankly, a shocking claim that Christ, who was already existing in the form of God, emptied himself. Now, what does that even mean? It raises this huge question. Did God somehow just stop being God for a while? The answer is a profound no. But man, understanding why that's the answer, it forces us to rethink pretty much everything we assume about power, authority, and what true greatness really looks like.
Okay, so before we can really get what it means to be emptied, we've got to ask, well, what was he holding in the first place, right? The hymn says Christ existed in the form of God. So what are we talking about here? It's not some physical shape. Nope. It's all about status and privilege.
The key Greek word here is morphe, and this is super important. It doesn't refer to the inner unchangeable nature of God. That's not what's on the table here. Instead, morphe is all about the outward stuff, the visible glory, the status, the whole way of existing that just expresses divinity.
So being in the morphe of God, being what the Old Testament would call an elohim, that came with some serious perks. We're talking about things like immortality, glory and honor, freedom from pain, and being exempt from death. And then you just look at the other side of the ledger, the human condition, mortality, suffering and shame, vulnerability, and being subject to death. It's a total contrast, right? And that is the status that was voluntarily given up.
All right, so that brings us right to the main event of the hymn, this great emptying. The fancy Greek term for it is kenosis, and believe me, people have debated this for centuries. So let's get into it. What was actually emptied? Okay, so kenosis. It is not about subtraction. This isn't Christ pouring out his divinity like water from a cup, somehow becoming less God. No. Think of it more as an act of surrender. He willingly, voluntarily let go of the privileges of his divine status. All that glory and honor and exemption from suffering we just talked about, that's what he set aside.
And the hymn, it just lays the logic out so clearly. Step 1, he had all these divine privileges. Step 2, he chose not to exploit that status for his own benefit or self-preservation. So, step 3, he emptied himself. And then the big question, right? How? Well, here's the answer. By taking on a totally new morphe, a new form, the form of a slave, jumping headfirst into human existence.
And this is where the descent gets truly radical. I mean, think about it. He didn't just become a human being. He didn't even show up as a king or some revered philosopher. The text is specific. He took the form of a slave. And in the Roman world, you just couldn't get any lower on the social ladder. That was rock bottom.
And we need to be crystal clear about the word being used here. Doulos. This is not servant in the way we might think of it today, like a helpful employee. Not at all. In the ancient world, a doulos was quite literally property. A person with zero legal rights, zero personal honor, and absolutely zero protection from punishment, humiliation, or even execution. You were completely vulnerable. This quote just nails it perfectly. The ultimate act of giving up divine privilege was to become totally vulnerable. By becoming a doulos, he didn't just become human, he became punishable, entering a status where society could legally and publicly inflict shame and violence upon him.
So this whole descent into slavery, it perfectly sets the stage for the next big theme in the hymn, obedience. Now the text says he was obedient to the point of death, but hold on. This is not about just following a list of rules. It goes so much deeper. You see, in the world this hymn comes from, obedience wasn't some cold, robotic compliance. It meant covenant loyalty. It's this deep, relational idea of unwavering faithfulness to God, sticking with it no matter what it costs you. So when we read about Christ's obedience, that's what we're talking about, a lifelong posture of absolute committed loyalty. And boy, was that loyalty put to the ultimate test. Crucifixion. Let's be clear, this was not a noble death. It was a punishment designed by the Romans specifically for slaves and rebels, a tool of imperial terror. So his death wasn't a tragedy befitting a hero. It was the humiliating execution of someone with the legal status of a slave. And yet, through all of that, his covenant loyalty to God held firm.
Okay, so after this unbelievable descent, this ultimate act of loyalty, we finally get to the turning point in the story, the exaltation. The hymn says that because he was faithful, God highly exalted him. So, what does that actually look like? What does it really mean?
Now, this is really important. This exaltation isn't some kind of cosmic consolation prize, like, hey, thanks for suffering, here's a reward. No, it's a public vindication. It's God basically shouting to the entire cosmos, this right here, this path of self-giving, of letting go of privilege, of loyalty even to a slave's death. This is what real, true divine authority actually looks like.
So, what does this exaltation actually involve? Well, he is given the name that is above every name. Now, if you're thinking from a first century Jewish perspective, there's only one name that could possibly be Yahweh, the personal, sacred name of God himself. And to give someone that name, that is to grant them the authority and the sovereign rule that belongs to God and God alone. Okay, let's pull all these threads together. We've been on quite a journey, haven't we? From this pre-incarnate glory all the way down to the status of a punishable slave, through a loyal death, and all the way back up to cosmic exaltation. So what's the big idea? What is the final revolutionary takeaway from this amazing hymn? Well, it really boils down to two completely opposite models of power. On one hand, you've got the world's model, right? It's all about domination. It's about clinging to your privilege, self-preservation at all costs, grabbing for more status. But this hymn, it just flips that whole script. It reveals a totally different way. That true divine authority is actually found in loyalty, in giving up privilege, and in walking the path of the punished slave.
And so that leaves us with a pretty provocative question, doesn't it? If the ultimate story of the universe shows that the path of a punished slave leads to the highest place of honor and authority, well, what does that say about where we, as human beings, should be looking for true greatness? What does it say about our own ideas of power, status, and success? That's something we're thinking about.